Good evening. I'm Doug Myers with PMC, and we're here with the middle school design and construction team to request the approval for design development documents for the project. We have a short, very brief presentation. We've been working on this project for quite a long time. We've had schematic design approval. That took place in January. In February, we had a preliminary work session where we started to talk about the scope. We started looking at budget concerns. We started looking at opportunities for alternates and how we want to develop the project. And tonight, we would like to go ahead and get approval of that. Briefly, we'll continue the construction documents. We'd be looking in December to be going to the board for GMP approval so that we could start construction in March of 2018 and finish up in June 2019. So what we'd like to do is give a brief kind of recap of exactly what we have in the project and what we don't have in the project, and we can answer any questions to budget or any other concerns you have at that time. So GQ will start with the presentation.
Good evening, I'm Jaquil Sanders with Moody Nolan, and as Doug said, we're going to go through the scope of the project, where we are right now. So, beginning with a typical classroom, what's going to be in each of the classrooms: finishes, new carpet, new paint, new ceiling tiles. We're also doing new marker boards. Technology, there will be new...
Closer to the microphone here. Thank you.
New short throw projectors, wireless access points, new ceiling mounted paging speakers and paging call buttons, new clocks. Electrical, there will be new LED lighting with occupancy sensors and two zones dimming along the teaching wall and over the student desk, and also with daylight sensors. All new wiring and receptacles. HVAC, again, new water source heat pumps. Each classroom will have its own thermostat, so the individual classrooms can be controlled, individually. New supply diffusers and grills, again, that's part of new ceilings. And alternates would be a new sound reinforcement system.
What exactly is that?
That is there are 1 to 4 speakers in the ceilings, so that when you're running audio from a presentation, and also there would be a lavalier for the teacher as they're presenting that helps the kids in the back of the room, or just better overall sound in the room.
It's comparable to what we did at the high school, because I know we did that, which I was surprised we were doing that, but then we're doing that. So basically, correct me if I'm wrong, every classroom then would, the only things, well, I guess probably in what we're not doing, everything in the classroom is going to have a new feeling. It's going to be fresh, new look in every classroom. The only caveat of not fresh, it would be, I believe you're leaving the old air handlers are going to be sort of mothballed for the future, and then the windows will be the current windows we have, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Just a question. The materials that we have now is not that, right?
That's right. Sorry. This is a summary, right? So the materials that were given previously, it's the same design development. What we've done is we've tried to simplify and clarify what is in and what isn't in.
If you run on one, I think there's a few pages in the drawings. Yeah, that was, if you go in your packet of all the...
So this is just summarizing this?
Exactly.
Right.
There's
Okay.
a couple of pages that goes into specifics of the classrooms. This should be a encapsulation of the detail.
Okay, so on the next slide, these are just overall building-wide improvements. Again, there's new heating and cooling throughout the buildings, new electrical panels and distribution, so new wiring, all of that. New lighting, again, in all of the spaces, new plumbing fixtures, new technology, so again, new projectors, paging systems, wireless access points, security cameras, new fire alarms and life safety systems. New finishes and graphics in the student dining, new reception area finishes and new reception desk, ADA improvements, new elevator cab finishes in both buildings. There would be limited roof repair as related to new rooftop units or units that are being removed. There would be abatement as required, and there would be minimal site improvements, again, to accommodate any work that would happen on the site. So majority of the site is going to be the same as it is. We're just going to basically repair what we might have to dig up. For building-specific improvements, there would be a new main entry at the rear. Improvements, there is an existing transformer room, electrical room out back that will not be needed after the renovation, so we will be trying to recapture that space to provide a better entry and to give more space at the end of the day and beginning of the day when the children are waiting for the buses. There will be a reconfigured guidance area and near the library to bring all of the offices into one space instead of some of them being on the opposite side of the library and some of them being close to the main office. The lower level locker rooms, this is when discussing with the principals, they said that's because you can't transverse from one side of the building to the other on the lower levels, that they're currently running multiple gym periods, so this would allow them to have all of the kids in the locker rooms near the west gym. So for Roxborough, there would also be main entry improvements, new finishes, lighting, graphics, and also new lower level restrooms at Roxborough. There are no restrooms on that lowest level where there were improvements made a few years ago, so this alleviates the need to send the kids up into the rest of the building or have to take more time between periods.
We have, we talk about the occupancy census of those, we have the ability to time those according to what a teacher desires or what's appropriate for whatever activities there. Do they just stay on for a period of time and then automatically go off?
Yeah, the typical light occupancy sensor, so if nobody's in the room, the lights are going to go off. So, and
but it wouldn't, if I left out of the room, it would stay on for some period of time.
yeah, there's a certain period of time they'll be on.
And I'm asking, do we set that, does a teacher have the ability, for example, to set her own occupancy timer?
No, generally the individual classrooms, you wouldn't be able to set the timer for them. It would be just a system-wide setting. We don't typically have it. I mean, you'll still be able to individually control the lights. So if you want them dimmer, you want them brighter. But this is also to avoid, when people leave a room and they forget to turn a light off, the light will just go off by itself after a certain period of time, because without any motion in the room, it's assumed that there's nobody in the room.
And to flail your arms like you've done for 25 years. But on the do you mind going back to the last slide for a second? And if you'd rather have questions at the end, whatever you prefer.
Move at your pace.
Rhetorical, I'm hoping. When you say accessibility improvements for ADA, can I make the assumption that these will be completely ADA compliant?
Due to the nature of the renovation, there are just spaces that we cannot make fully ADA compliant because we're not doing the extensive renovations.
So are we grandfathered in then? Is that what you're going to tell me is the reason why we get by with that?
Yes.
And in terms of student access, we know our population now, we don't necessarily know our population going forward. Is that a problem? I mean, it's something I just would want to know if it's a problem. Are we limiting any of our students by not being ADA?
We can. I mean, it depends on what students were. I mean, just like our elementary schools, I just put chairlifts in there just to be able to get a student from one floor to another. I think we're covered with chairlifts
Yeah.
Well, I think it depends.
for these levels, but for ADA compliant, it's not going to be to code because we're not taking the whole building to code, but we have chairlifts to get to each level. They have to use chairlifts.
If memory serves, the question would be which spaces are not ADA accessible? I think the ones that I believe were the one, at least the Monticello, between the elevator and chairlifts, you should be accessible to all access levels. I think if memory serves, it's the spaces in Rock's Middle next to the gym because of the stairwells that are pretty much, I think those were pretty much, I think, earmarked to be, I don't want to say mothballed, but basically be storage as opposed to usable classroom space.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of the Roxborough, just the way that that's configured, those half levels on each side of the gym. There's not a good way to do it within the scope of what we're doing right now, but there will be the chairlifts in other locations to accommodate that. Typically when we say like ADA compliant, we're talking about, trying to avoid using chairlifts and, making sure past the elevators and other things.
I understand. I don't really need to push into this further than just to say it'd be probably worthwhile to be sure that none of our students are being limited beyond a point where we can have that, to the point where they can't access the things they need. So, and I'm
Right.
ready to answer you. And then I'm gonna push it on you a little bit, abatement as required. Does that mean I can expect that there will be no unforeseen abatement conditions?
This is a renovation, and from my experience with renovations, I cannot promise you that there will not be anything that is unforeseen.
Then I
that's-
change the words there. I mean,
Well-
abatement as required means to me, you will do any abatement that's required. That's what that means.
Well, what we mean by that is if we're touching it and it needs to be abated, we will do that.
I'm just gonna tell you, I'm very sensitive to
The bigger
unforeseen
picture to
conditions
remember
right
though,
now.
moving ahead, is that we're gonna have requirements to manage the asbestos in both those buildings, because we are not removing it.
Okay, all right, no, that's, all right, thank you.
So when we think about the minimal site improvements, this is landscaping outside? Is that what that is? Or something else?
There won't be any landscaping. So, for example, for each of the buildings, when we're running new electrical service, there'll be a trench that's coming off of the pole into the building. So we'll have to dig a trench, put the conduit in, and then, restore that area. But there's not gonna be, we're planting all new, greenery,
So it's
trees.
not
and
really
shrubbery.
site improvement, it's just site maintenance?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, I just wonder if we're doing any improvement or we're just fixing what we had to do as we went through.
Yeah, Roxborough, because of an agreement with the city of Cleveland Heights, their planning department, from when the tennis courts was converted to a parking lot, we're gonna have to do some level of improvement in terms of parking configuration and a little bit of landscaping, and we're working with the Cleveland Heights planning department to iron out what that will be and what the scope of that is, but it's not gonna be extensive.
Is that the only case?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so summary of the items that are not included: full roof replacement, food service equipment, window replacement, existing casework will remain, lockers will remain, furniture is not included, new furniture is not included, exterior wall improvement, as we mentioned earlier, the unit ventilator heaters and radiator heaters will remain in the classrooms, abandoned in place. The internal plumbing infrastructure will remain as is. We are replacing the plumbing fixtures, so that'll be new lavs, toilet, water closets, urinals, drinking fountains. We're not doing a full fire suppression sprinkler systems. It's not required under the code at this time due to the scope of the work that we're doing. And network servers, switches, and UPS equipment is also not included.
You mentioned the fixtures in the restrooms. I know in the swatches, I think the boards had new tile. The current bathroom fixtures in most of the bathrooms, I believe the tile from the 72 renovation. Are we removing that and putting new tile in, or are we just, the color swatches were for areas where we're adding to it? I guess, so if I've got 3 walls in that space and they got tile from 72, are we removing that and putting new walls in there?
There will be new tile,
Okay.
and we're reconfiguring most of the bathrooms to make sure that they are ADA compliant. So
Okay.
in some cases, that requires removing a toilet and
Okay.
shifting things over, and we can't leave a hole in the wall where the fixture was.
So to the not the naked eye, as to the untrained eye, I walk into that restroom, it's gonna look like a brand new bathroom, for the most part.
Not
No?
necessarily.
Okay, depends on the restroom.
Yeah, whatever gets damaged,
We probably
The
need you at the
removal?
mic as you're speaking.
whatever gets damaged from the removal of the existing fixtures, we're gonna patch and repair, and we're not gonna make it look like a patch and repair.
Right.
So let's say there's a whole line of tile that needs to be replaced, we'll replace it with
Right, okay.
what you're gonna show. So we're not gonna take down, the floor tile will remain the same except for where we patch it. The wall tile will remain the same except for where we patch it, and we're gonna try and make it as decorative and sensible as possible.
So it would be better to describe it as a renovation versus a gut rehab.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. So you'll get the new fixtures, you'll get new tile where we need to patch, there'll be new partitions, and that would be the gist of it,
Okay,
and
got it.
paint.
I think it's more a question for maybe George, and I'm not sure if you'll know George, but the last thing on the list, network servers, do we need new network servers, or are our network servers in decent shape?
Yes, we need new servers, and that's part of what we'll discuss later.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
So when you say discuss later, tonight?
When they're done.
That's what I assume. Just wanted to make sure we're on the same page.
Are there any other questions for me? And I can turn over to George. Oh, yeah, I forgot, we have one more slide. Okay, so project schedule, and I will let Jack Kellogg from Turner talk about schedule.
So this is the schedule that we prepared back in December, and so you're just seeing a reiteration of what you've already seen. And the next milestone is that we will prepare a GMP based on 75% construction documents, and we will start the GMP on October 2nd, and then we will have the GMP completed in the middle of November, and then we turn it over to you with the goal to have the GMP approved on December 19th of 2017. And then after that, Moody Nolan is still finalizing the drawings through the end of the year, and then once they complete the drawings at the end of the year, we will take the final drawings, do a quick check versus the GMP documents, make sure that everything was consistent, and then we will award the contracts in February and mobilize for a March start of construction.
Is it, I know these are just very basic component for the plans. Is it possible to get a CD with the drawings? Because it's supposed to print out. I'd appreciate looking at it if you could get one, that'd be great.
So is it customary to do a 75% versus 100% construction?
75% is customary. I mean, it would, if we had unlimited time, we would do it on 100% CDs, but 50% CDs is done in some cases, 75% is better, so 75% is normal.
What's the contingency that we have? Is
We have
it 6 or 8?
3%.
That's a construction contingency?
Mhm.
If I could add to that, we still have escalation is in the construction estimate, so this is design development. So there's more evolution of the project that needs to happen. So we still have escalation is in there, and we still have a little bit of a delta between the 30 million that we have budgeted and what we have scoped out right now, so that we're trying to get the total project contingency up as high as we can. What I can see in there is we probably have about 4.5%, 5.5% in there right now.
I guess the 75% versus 100%, what is, when you're at 75% versus, obviously 100 to 100, at 75%, are there specific elements that still need to be drawn out, or is it everything needs a little bit more work? I guess that's sort of what I'm trying to get at. Is for a layperson, what's the difference sort of between 100% is obviously done, but at 75, is it just everything needs a little more work, or would there be specific elements that are, I don't want to say lagging behind, but aren't as scoped out as other elements?
Well, it's a combination of all of the above, unfortunately.
Okay.
That's not the answer you probably want to hear, but there are probably items right now at DD that are probably 75% CD.
Okay.
And so we'll get those developed for certain to 100%. And then there will be some things that lag behind. And it'll all depend on scope and some of the changes and some of the things we still need to discuss regarding alternates. And the heavy amount of drawings that you're going to see in this package is going to be mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and technology. So those consultants, they're going to have portions that are going to be, some of it is almost 75, 50% CDs at this point. So it's just kind of one of those things.
So then, to a degree,
shifts.
the last quartile is really the details and the nuances of the farther you get along, okay, we need a more specific answer because you're running a specific trunk line, that's going to go into the cut, but when you put something specific, maybe more of, not to say in the field, but more nuanced and changed as you get into the weeds.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. And then the specifications will, certainly those those for some reason always seem to lag behind the drawings, but, so like 75%, those are pretty tight.
Gotcha.
But by 100%, you know, they're really good. And the whole coordination piece usually happens between 75% and 100% as well, so.
Okay.
Can you explain CDs? I mean, all of this is.
Okay, so starting from the beginning, you know, we start with a program of requirements, and we provide you guys program drawings or pre-schematic design drawings. We've gotten to that point. That's kind of very loose, general information. By schematic design, we have a little bit more information. We have a true floor plan. We have our elevations. That we pretty much know the systems that we want to use. By design development, we've just taken all of that then to the next level. So it's the specifications now are, like I said, about 75% written. A lot more detailing. Some of the items that were like small 1/8 inch scale plans are now blown up to be 1/4 inch plans, and the interiors of the rooms are now elevated in design development, where in schematic design they weren't. Going into the construction documents, the next level is to make sure that everything that we've elevated, every plan that we've done, now has even larger components in the forms of sections or details, so that, you know, Jack and his crew can really get down to all of the pieces, parts of everything we've drawn. So it's just a larger, more descriptive and more detailed drawn set of documents when it comes to the construction documents. So it's the next level of layers of drawings.
Okay, so I don't want to dwell too much on the contingency, but it's kind of it is a big issue. So let's sort of look at the worst case scenario. I mean, this is a project that we have a limited budget, and we can't go over the number. And the contingencies there is basically a factor to kind of help protect us. Right, to life, exactly. So, you know, let's say that we start walking down this path, the GMP is calculated, and we're now over budget, and we have not enough money in our contingencies to get beyond this.
Can't allow that to happen.
We can't allow that. Well, that is, right.
We need a big contingency, just to make sure that doesn't happen.
So we can't go over what we need.
No, we can't do what we did in high school. This has a top to it, we can't
Okay.
go over.
Okay, so
Or a bottom to it.
I get that. So when you sort of look right now at the 3%, 5%, and I know not all the numbers are in from the high school, which, if we're lucky, we may have more money. We shouldn't have less money. We know that, because everything right now at this point in the high school is all over budget. Over budget in our numbers, maybe that's the wrong word to use. I mean, if we know we've got an issue at the high school, a high number has been plugged in that column to anticipate any further issues. But I mean, I guess the issue here is I just want to make absolutely sure that we're not going to go over budget on this. And I know it's a little bit too soon.
Well, Jim, I think his answer probably can't get any better. We can't go over budget. If there is, I don't know how we would go over budget. They couldn't go over budget without the board doing something. And his answer can't get any better than that.
Okay.
Well, and
We have to limit the scope.
when I think, what I've heard, and I think at least my hope and desire would be, any unused contingencies and dollars we have left for the high school goes into the contingencies for the middle school.
Yes.
And then when they're doing design development and they're speccing things out, any potential savings there, again, gets, at least my regard, my thought would be, gets put into that contingency. So I think the goal here is to get that 30 million ceiling on bricks and sticks, and then anything additional dollars we have goes to add it into building that contingency up. So it goes from theoretically 5 to 7 to a larger number.
Yeah, and I think we always have to pay attention to our language. What I think is that if we had money, contingency money coming out of the high school, to put it into contingency is one way to think about it, but we ought to think about contingency, not as money we go get to do stuff, but money that we're trying to save to potentially do things that we left out. So bringing contingency money from the high school might mean the things that we weren't able to do right now, that maybe we can pull some stuff and put them back into the project.
Well, I would, in my opinion, I would caution, they do have a schedule for the drawdown on the contingencies based upon how far the more the building goes along, the more, if it's unused, then they can sort of release it. And in my opinion, I know there's a list of bid day alternates. We
Right.
have some of those, which I think to a degree, I think a number of those are primarily paint and carpet, so those should be able to add on. And I would be very reticent until we are 50% or more in the project to even consider, if we have unused contingency, to even remotely consider releasing it for add-on. So my goal, and I think the hope would be, is that the staff is already looking at, if we have contingency left after that certain point, what can we plug in, like kitchen equipment, for example?
But that's a mechanical view on how we deal with it. I mean, it shows up, there's some, we're trusting our staff to at least be able to be on top of that. We don't have to, I don't think we have to go too much into this at this point, because we don't know what it's gonna look like yet. We don't even have the foggiest idea at this point. We do know that we can't go over budget, and we're hoping that we have some money left out of the high school. And that's about it.
And right now, contingency, in my opinion, can only be looked at as an insurance policy.
Yeah.
I don't think we start planning for all the things we might want to do with money we don't know we're going to have yet. I have a question for you, Doug. I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, when Jeff Applebaum, who is the principal of your firm, PMC, was here, I believe he's the one who actually has touted 75% as the sweet spot, actually. I think he would actually say 75% is the spot to be at in construction development. I'm sorry. Is that correct?
That is
Because
absolutely correct. And as you know,
our owner's rep. So
with-
please stay.
with construction reform, there's been evolutions, but basically 75% has always been Jeff Applebaum's recommendation. And then I know, at least with my past experience.
Your firm's recommendation.
So,
let's call it. So.
okay, yes, PMC's recommendation. And now as we see a lot of the projects that started to do it a little too early at 50%, they're finding that 75% is really, because there is a risk by the contractor, by the construction manager at risk. And if you take it too far, then you actually might as well just go ahead and bid out the project and have actually hard dollar costs.
Right.
So the value to the owner is to actually go ahead, get the documents defined enough so that as the details, as Ann was explaining, get finalized, the project scope doesn't change enough that the estimates that the construction manager at risk have put together actually change. So 75% is the recommendation from PMC to go ahead and develop the documents before you get into the GMP.
Thank you.
So, Cal, I want you to note that he would not say sweet spot. So don't expect a home run.
Okay.
He did not use that terminology, and you offered it up a few
But
times.
I would note that he did say it is PMC's recommendation, so thank you very much.
Yeah, he did say that.
I would also like to add, as we talk about contingencies, there's a lot of ways that you can control the unknowns in the project. We use allowances, we use alternates, contingencies. And so all of these tools we are putting together, and we're working closely with the district to look at opportunities because we know that there's a large list of items that we would like to do. And so we'll put the team in the best position, so as we move forward, we are going to have milestones. With the GMP, we're actually going to know. When they actually have the bid come in, we're going to know a little bit more and everything else. So along each one of those those steps of the process, we're going to have opportunities to make these decisions.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I have questions for Doug, but they're high school questions, not middle school questions.
Well, I think probably we should do it some other time unless, how does this come into this conversation
Well,
in your mind?
Well, because Doug's here, and I was gonna ask him a question. But I have a feeling the questions gonna ask him are probably Gilbane questions, so he's probably gonna say, ask him for a Gilbane.
Well,
But I have nothing left on middle schools.
okay, then let's. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I think now we're supposed to vote, right? Oh, we need a motion, that's right. I need a motion to approve the design development document.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. No further discussion? Okay. So I think we can vote now.
Oh, it's 4,200.
It's really sensitive, isn't it?
That is handy pixels.
Have you got the vote already?
Did you make, I was gonna say, 'cause
I
you
don't know
can
what I-
change your vote if you,
I don't know what I did.
You voted.
What no?
because
Well,
the,
let me tell you something. When he puts it up, we'll know what I did.
Yeah.
I know what you did.
That's one way to go.
You voted yes, but I know what you did.
This is so much more efficient.
it said that you did. Registered vote.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
But it's all
The
about.
motion.
But how can I change it? I don't see it.
Why would you
Have
change
you
it?
already closed the voting?
I closed the vote, yes.
Oh, because he closed the voting. If he had not closed it yet, you could, there was a little check mark up there that said change vote.
Do you have to open it back up?
You can do that?
You vote the wrong way.
Yes, you can.
That's a good question. So
That's
how,
balanced
what's the
gambling.
procedure that opens the voting back up once you close it?
Ask them to open
He would just have
I
to.
could ask a question, I'm not going to. Hey,
Or after some successful period of time, we'll just say.
Well, I guess the question, if I'm asked, trying to run the meeting, the question might be, should we have some acknowledgement that the voting is gonna close? Or the voting is
Then
closed?
countdown
Yeah,
clock.
that is, that's
That's
certainly
fair.
internal
That's fair.
procedures. And you need to all be comfortable. If one person isn't registered, some boards would say, Mr. Register, I'm not showing your vote, or I don't have everyone's vote, could you vote? You may not want to be called out individually, or you may want a blanket statement, and
I think that's fair. And then Scott can say, is everybody?
yeah, so he can tell you
So
if
I can
he's
say I
still
have
alive,
everyone.
he
Okay,
can say,
okay.
I
And then
don't
you-
So we
still.
probably should just do that.
How many of your customers turn on the voting feature right away? Or does everybody use it?
Yeah, when we come out and do the training, we demonstrate it, and it's kind of one of those things, if you want, it's not gonna get easier, so it's kind of jump in with both feet. Almost everybody does. There was one state that until recently didn't allow it, and now all 50 states have passed laws that allow for it.
It doesn't, I mean, everything in your application feels good, except for the voting part.
I think that will come with time. Y'all have brand new, you've never used these machines, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's a
Yeah,
lot.
and they're touch screen. I mean, just like you said, it happened fast. It's got a touchpad, it's got a touch screen. And so I think that's a little bit of what you're struggling with, which might be easier if you had a mouse. So if you would be more comfortable with that, I'm sure that they, because it's just a plug-in. So, yeah, there's some. So if that would make that process easier, then I'm sure they'd be happy to
Or
provide
are you
that.
talking more about just the feeling of having a vote? I mean, not
Yeah,
the
I mean-
process, but just having your vote on the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's,
And it's different.
Yeah, even if he registers the votes, instead of y'all clicking, if he registers, yeah, it's still gonna show on the screen unless you just.
no, I don't mind it showing on the screen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, that's all
I
public.
was-
I mean, I guess it just, when we actually when someone in the audience heard you say yes or no.
Right.
It seems like there's, especially in some of the things that we've recently talked about, it's like, oh, we're going to, okay, so this is, you know, we're not gonna close a school, but if you're gonna close a school, it's like, oh, I pushed a button to just close a school, it just doesn't,
Well,
it seems like,
well,
yes.
Yeah, back to your
Yeah,
point.
I think to be honest, I would say for most, my thought at least going forward, all the basic perfunctory stuff we do, which is real boilerplate stuff, I think then, boom, we just gotta come up with a better methodology, boom, 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 bang them out, because those are pretty much, usually the only no or abstention is because someone has the appearance of a conflict of interest, so they know somebody. I think my personal preference would be that whenever it's something that's much more higher profile, that we do a voice vote, because I think that's, yeah, the idea of sitting here pressing a button on a controversial topic or subject, I don't think that's right.
Well, and absolutely, he can still open, so you have that. And do y'all typically go around the room when you do voice vote, or do you call one? How does that proceed?
Well, it's actually on a rotation, you know. with the
Oh,
votes,
and
the
we
sheet,
cannot, yeah, and we can't rotate it. No,
So-
that's the one thing is you cannot rotate in here. But if there were only a couple of items where you were going to do that, then maybe that wouldn't be an issue. The names are in how they're in, they cannot be shuffled. But what you could do is the way you've always done it, you know, where you go around the room and as you say, you know, aye or no, then you click at the same time. So certainly that's accessible for you.
Just, now that we're here, you've recorded the vote, you have it.
Mhm.
And if I look at my screen, can I go to the next item now?
Mhm.
That's what I was
Board
trying to, like,
members
the next
can
item,
go.
the next item is the closing of the meeting, but what?
Go ahead.
See, I'm not sure exactly if we just, he can show it, or if he's actually recorded it. I'm thinking maybe he's just showing it as opposed to
Oh,
having.
no. Once it shows, it's recorded, it's in the system.
What could, why couldn't I get to that?
Go back.
I was trying to go to closing of the meeting.
You click on adjournment.
Yeah, adjournment is the,
You have to click on the-
remember,
Okay.
categories don't do anything, they're
Okay,
just
okay,
placeholders.
okay,
The item is
I
adjournment.
got it. Okay, I got it.
And what I want you to see, now he is still on this
Yeah, I
item.
see it.
So you can move
it.
anywhere in the meeting that you want and know where the meeting is. Because, you know, sometimes, you know, during a conversation, you may want to, you know, look at something else real quickly, you know. And so you can
Not
move
in favor.
anywhere and know where the minute, you know where the meeting is.
Okay.
Yeah, you're the president, you probably want to follow along, but.
Right, but I thought you were asking a different question. I didn't know if it's because of the size of your screen, but the motion voting is at the bottom. If you scroll all the way down in that section, you can see
Yeah.
what the voting was. I don't know. if
Well,
it was-
actually, I've discovered that we don't have enough, the screen is not
Yeah,
big
there
enough
it
to
is.
contain.
Well, you could shrink the screen just like you can zoom in, but it's
Well,
pretty small
it's a
font.
zoom in, but you lose stuff. I haven't, you can't,
Listen.
No, but you can zoom out. The problem is then the font gets really small. Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know.
I've been
I
doing
will.
it, I've been doing it, so.
Yeah, I understand.
So next, we want to have George is going to come up and we're going to have a discussion around PI.
He's not on the agenda.
It's a surprise.
Well, we're not voting or approving anything, it's just a discussion, so.
Is it okay, Eric, if we, George, tell us about
I
that?
was cracking wise that.
Yeah, I'm cracking wise.
I didn't see it. It's,
So, I mean, I think one of the reasons George is here is I asked a couple questions, because
Well, we
Well, I
thought,
don't-
well, no, we actually
don't.
thought that it would be appropriate to have the PI discussion after design development, because we knew that there were some things in the scope of work that we can't do. So we thought it would be appropriate to have this discussion after seeing, and now the board is aware of the things that are included and not included in the project. So, and we have a list of some alternates. Now that we have our, bless you, our PI dollars, then what does that look like now? What are the things that we already have planned to use permanent improvement funds on? And how does that relate to the project?
Almost 70%.
Okay.
So the timing of discussion was good, Jim.
So, as you just approved the DDs, I wanted to have the opportunity, and I shared in a previous update, the 5-year plan that we have in place currently for projects within a district. And again, as I've said in the past, and we've talked about this, it's an ever-changing document. It's changed again. I mean, there's things that we added for the high school that I had to purchase equipment so we can maintain the high school. So this is a living document that at some point, I'm working with Mr. Wortman, we're going to put a portion of this up on the website so the public can share, and see, it should be shared with the public, and they can see what our plans are and what we're currently working on. So that is actually one of our goals that we're working on we're hoping to get done within the next couple of months. But the concern was that we do have numerous items, as you're well aware of, that are not being done in the middle schools. And it's going to affect the plan that you have seen in the past, because I have to now take and interject Monticello and Roxborough into that 5-year PI budget at some point to make sure we're doing our due diligence with the schools. And a big example is the facade. You know, we had in 2016, I had Taylor Consulting come in, assess all of our schools, with the exception of the middle school, because we felt the time was going to get a complete renovation. And they gave us a 10-year preventive maintenance plan that we have been adhering to the best of our ability. This year, we took in deferred masonry at Rox Elementary from the previous year that we didn't do, and we did the entire facade at Roxelle because that was the worst one in the district. After discussing it with Greg Taylor, actually Monticello would have been in front of Roxelle. So redeveloping just that plan, you'll see on there at the back of this document, not the very last page, the second last page, actually the one before that, I've included outliers. And that includes Roxborough Middle School's facade. And the estimate's $850,000. So when you see a number there, that is an estimate either from the consultant that has developed roof repairs or for Turner Construction. So if you look at like the middle school kitchen, coolers and equipment, that's just a rough estimate. If we went into the kitchens and replaced the walk-in coolers, the walk-in refrigerators, some of the line equipment that is desperately needed. Middle school network equipment, servers, UPS switches, we're not touching those. That's a Turner estimate for both schools. And you look at Roxborough site improvements, city required. At some point, if that's not in the budget, we have to do that. And we're estimating those improvements somewhere in that neighborhood, because what they're going to probably require us to do are some islands with some trees. That was their first thought when I was talking with Carol O'Donnell when we did those, took one of the tennis courts away. And then you have the Monticello facade, elevator replacement. That's high. If you looked at what's in the current budget, that's just taking, you're going to have the same equipment there. We're just going to have nicer looking old cabs. But the equipment's still going to be the older stuff. And then the furniture, Dr. Dixon and I have had, you approved the sale of the existing furniture, and of course none of that has taken place yet. But when we really sit and evaluate the needs at both of these schools, it's a tough decision to make when we know, do we sell the furniture knowing that we're going to have to take $1 million of this money and put it aside for new furniture, which our students deserve. They deserve to walk into a school and have new chairs and desks and so on. But if the roof's going to leak on top of the new furniture, at some point we have to make some tough decisions. So with the next 5 years, we have to somehow interject some of this, in my opinion, into this plan, or we'll be fixing things. I mean, we could open these buildings up in the following year You could have roof leaks, we could have failing elevators. I have kitchen equipment that should have been replaced last year that I'm gonna have to take care of at some point here.
George, I got some quick questions. I would throw them out because I want to get a sense looking at the multiple pages. You've got in an outlier HVAC controls district-wide $500,000. What exactly is that? I'm sorry.
Well, we are currently operating all the elementary schools, this building, Delisle, under Teletrol, which is really an unheard of control system. It's not like Honeywell, you know. The problem is that it's outdated. Just for one panel that controls, say, a portion of a building, the replacement panel costs $35,000. They don't even make them anymore. I have to buy refurbished off of the internet and hopefully have somebody out of the last one I got was out of California. Somebody had an old panel, they refurbished and we bought it. So as these buildings and systems are failing, it's costing us more money than if we actually invested in upgrading our control system. So the goal is that, of course, we're going to expect and demand that our controls in the middle schools are going to be what we have in the high school. And from that, we would manage the replacement at the elementary schools.
And when you say, I'm sorry, that's basically, it's not just air, you're talking, it's all the it's the
HVAC controls.
It's not merely just air conditioning in a space, it's the whole enchilada.
Yeah, you're not touching the systems themselves. I'm not replacing any air conditioning. I'm just talking about the thermostat on the wall, going back to a panel that's controlling our current equipment.
Okay. And then you had that, we have HVAC unit replacement elementary, $400,000 in 2021. That I would assume you have a replacement cycle or whatever fails.
You see the word deferred, and I know Mr. Posh, and we can add some things based on what you like here. I use this for a different reason than financial, because if you look at the last page is a financial from Bob Reinhardt. So you can get which is actually nice, because it's showing you from fiscal year 12 to our current estimated fiscal year 18 permanent improvement funds. So Bob looks at it from the strictly financial point. I look at it from trying to manage different projects. So what was my point going to be? The deferred items, like an air conditioning system, we replaced one at Canterbury, $134,000 for one air conditioning unit. You have 4 of them on top of each elementary school, the footprints. You have numerous, I think 2 on different, like I think Noble has 1. You have 1 small one at the office, but each school varies. But when you're looking at a multi-zone unit, you're looking around $100,000.
This is a placeholder number. You don't have a specific schedule for replacement.
And I have an opportunity, because I know I've actually inquired with a architectural firm that we've used in the past, K2M, and knowing that we're going to be looking at either jumping into looking at the facilities plan and really evaluating our elementary schools, I have an architectural firm that can provide us with another oversight if we decide to go down that road. And they would actually evaluate our equipment to each unit, telling us which one I would put in a replacement cycle, which one would be first. Right now, for example, Roxborough Middle School, if we weren't replacing the unit on top of the media center, I'd have to do it. Because we're down, out of 3 compressors, we're only operating on 1.
I know in 1819, we have Roxborough elementary windows, doors, and then again, these are sort of placeholders. You have Canterbury in 2021, Canterbury doors, windows. Now, when you're saying that's a window replacement plan?
That's currently what Greg Taylor did for us. So we have there's 3 items, actually 4. So he did the roofs as one separate placeholder. And then you have the masonry and windows and doors were another part of his evaluation. So I plugged that into their 10-year plan into our 5-year forecast. So there's 5 years more, 5-year additional years of repairs that we should be plugging in.
Well, I guess where I'm going with the question is, for the window replacement, for this window and door replacement at those 2 buildings, right now, I know Canterbury has the Fleischmann window, not the Fleischmann, I don't remember
the add-ons.
The brand, yeah. I can't remember the knit. It's not, we call them Fleischmann windows, but there's the bronze windows.
Right.
Is this replacing those with, I guess, the question, where I'm sort of going with, is it, okay, we're just going to put a new version of that on there, or are we talking?
No, we would
period
try,
style?
we would do it right.
Okay, that's
And
what,
there, and when it came to design, that would, again, be a typical project that would come up in front of the board. The design of the window, there would be opportunities for that selection.
The energy
This is just a
efficiency.
plan that says, hey,
Okay.
you have all these assets,
Right.
and to manage them properly, you should take care of them in this order.
I think my last one on this would actually be then, the 1920, we have the bus depot coming back here. Currently, is that when our lease expires at Park?
2009, I think it's yes, it's 2020.
The question I would pose is, what do we pay, what did it cost us to lease, not the capital improvements, but the lease? What did the lease cost us for 5 years?
It's 2,500 a month, 2,400 a month. So you're
So
20,
30,000 a year.
28,
by-
30,000.
So basically, well, the question I would pose is, because parks seem to work out real well,
Works out very nice.
I'd be interested in extending that lease for 5 more years as opposed to spending, because that could save you almost $500,000.
You know, Dr. Dixon and I, that's one of those things we sort of just in discussions talked about. I'd have to investigate.
Well, oh yeah, because I mean, that's.
I mean, it's nice for the Park Synagogue because it's a piece of unused property and we vacate it as they request on holidays. That's the only struggle that we have with it, because now I have to run 48 buses and park them in other places.
But I mean, if the ability for us to free up $500,000, that's compelling.
And that's just a rough estimate.
Oh, right,
I mean, if
yeah.
we bring back all the concrete and the electrical, that's why we're up around that amount. And that's a real rough estimate.
Yeah.
Everything you see here is just an estimate, whether it's from a consultant, an architect, or Pat O'Brien was a big help with a lot of this in the past, where we just sit down and go from past experience. And I think actually the parking lot at Wiley, we used the old numbers that it cost to put the concrete back.
I forgot there was one more. On the outliers, we had Milliken sprinkler system. Is that?
I have it there because if we decide, and again, this is just,
Right.
I'm sitting there trying to figure out what we have to worry about. If we decide, the board decides at some point that, hey, we love Milliken, we're going to stay in it, in the current existing use, we're going to have to go back in front of planning for reuse, and they will make a sprinkler.
Even though it's not a multi-tenant building, and
When we go back for a reuse of it, they're going to make a sprinkler.
it's a placeholder.
This little bird on my shoulder told me that, so.
Oh.
We will have to put, and I just put that there knowing that if we,
Right.
it's a great opportunity for us as a district to store stuff. If you haven't been there lately, you should come
Oh, yeah.
and see the stuff that we're able to salvage and save, hopefully for reuse in the middle school. We saved all that cabinetry from both those modulars and pulled it out. So even though you see a line item in the DD that we're not replacing any finish, like the cabinets, we have some that we plan on trying to do ourselves. But Milliken, it's a great location for us, but it's going to cost money for us to stay there.
Well, the flips, I mean, exactly, I don't like the idea that we have to put a sprinkler system in a building that hasn't had a sprinkler system for 60 years and has no, it's more for us if it catches fire, but the flip side is, as much as that's the case, if the roof is good and everything else is working, I think Milliken has been a phenomenal, it turned out really, really well.
And Milliken is not even in roof assessment or facade assessment whatsoever. I didn't have that done, so I would have to, the last roof was probably done in the early 2000s when we did a section that just before we closed it.
But my flip side is it's not the high school, it's not the elementaries, it's a storage facility that if there's a problem, we can fix it, so long as it's not a hazard, in my opinion. But no, I mean, I just wanted to get a sense, and I'd be very curious to know who that little bird is telling you that, because I'd like to know. I like to know.
Off the record.
Okay, that's good.
That's a fire issue too, isn't it? I mean, they don't.
Based on the reuse, right now, it's not zoned for what we're using it for, and that's why the city's allowing us to temporarily use it as we are. And we were told by Mr. Wong that if it would turn into any type of long-term, we'd have to go in front of
No longer a little bird, it's on public
that.
record.
He wasn't.
You're in the White House Communications Department, I think.
So, I mean, this living document is very helpful. I mean, the only immediate concern I have is the $1 million placeholder for the furniture. I've already expressed my opinion on that. I mean, we don't need to belabor that. We always had a limited amount of money for phase one of our facilities. We always knew we needed to go do a phase two to address the elementaries, which is on this list. It seems to me that we need to have a very comprehensive process to deal with this phase two, and deal with some of the middle school issues that we just can't afford right now. I mean, people are gonna say that we spend too much on phase one. Well, phase one was a limited budget, and things just cost more. I mean, I think we know that, but what are we gonna do about it? It may mean that we don't do phase two right away. I mean, I think we need to have the public enter the high school so that they can see firsthand. It's not over the top, but it's awfully nice. I think that's gonna help a lot. But we still need a plan for phase two, and I think we're gonna need to spend some time as a board to noodle on how we wanna deal with it. I mean, maybe we come up with some ideas in our committee, maybe we have staff do it. I don't know, I mean, it seems to me that's an issue. I mean, we've had a lot of facilities conversations, and I kind of feel that we've got academic issues we need to be focusing on, so maybe after our retreat is something that we can focus on.
Well, and I would agree. I would say, the thing for me, as much as it goes back to we need to get, and I think it's always been from the beginning, I think there's been misconfusion, which is probably not a real word. There's been confusion and misinformation in regard to, okay, I think there's a lot of element of the community that thinks, oh, once phase one's done, boom, we begin work on the elementary schools, which was never the case. But I think the more we get into the minutia of how the state does this whole project, I think we need to get, to a degree, whatever, even though there's always a rolling timeline, we need to at least, at the very least, what, based upon the current information and the state ideas, get the very least semblance of a timeline that we could say to the public, hey, based upon what we know right now, here's the earliest that phase two can be explored, because I think then it dovetails into what George has got here, is if we can start to mesh up the best case scenario timeline for phase two with what we're looking at the elementaries, I mean, to me, I hate to, we need to calibrate that, because that could actually leverage those dollars more efficiently. I think that's to me is a matter of, if George is putting money into Canterbury, and we know Canterbury's rock solid in our plan, then that's money that's money wisely spent. Conversely, if the plan changes or modifies, I hate to see us spend money on a building and then in a few years its utilization's changed.
I think the suggestion is a good one, that we should really, at some point, spend some time soon trying to scope out a little bit more as it relates to phase two. I think, so we can make that a note, and maybe that's a meeting that we need to have to talk about that. We've got some other things that we need to do, but certainly I think there are a couple of things that we need to go ahead and move forward on, which make it a little bit easier for us to get to more involved and more attention to the academic side of it. So.
And I think taking it from that, using an academic side is the approach too. Saying, we know we talked about pre-K through 5 buildings, then we're going to do magnet schools. I mean, there are a lot of different models, pre-K through 5, so it can really allow us to talk about what would happen in those buildings academic, thus what will the program design and that. So I think it will lend itself automatically to an academic conversation.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, the one thing I was gonna say, I mean, the flip side is that this is George's 5-year plan. We've got 2 years on the middle schools, so I would say even without having our firms from PMC to give us a hard, specific timeline, realistically, even if as soon as we finish the middle schools, we started into the whole phase 2 and the whole 9 yards, most of this is gonna have to happen almost no matter what, because of the time that occurs to do the whole process. unless we had a master plan from the state right now that they signed off on for phase 2 and we knew what we were gonna do, this stuff's gonna have to occur, almost no matter what.
Yeah, I think that's
And
right.
that's the reality, because, you know, in a best-case scenario, maybe the year 5 of this, or year 4 rolls into phase 2, but more likely than not, this is gonna stand on its own no matter what.
Yeah, and I guess my point is that we're not gonna take the time tonight, I don't
Oh,
think, to
right,
unpack all this. So,
Oh,
I think Jim's suggestion is right, and Dr. Dixon has noted that we wanna deal with that in the near future, so I think that's,
We do have.
Yeah.
Part of what, Mr. Register, what I want to be able to capture though, are some of these things will be money better spent if we sit and incorporate some of these repairs in the current project. And I say that because Moody Nolan is already well beyond 50% on some, let's use the facade as an example. We have an infrared that was we had conducted at school, I think it was a year and a half, 2 years ago, that the eastern wall of Monticello might as well not even be standing there. It was solid red, which means we're just losing heat through that elevation continuously, and we have water penetration through there. So if I don't do the facade, and we do the renovations, and we move students in there, and the following week we have water leaking out, I'm gonna have to take the money at some point and invest it in the facade of Monticello. But if we do it now, we're incorporating it into the project. It's less work for the rest of the district to have to worry about it, and the money will be spent on, they already did the design, the majority of it. They'll have to do additional to make sure it's done correctly, because they only did a portion of it. But things like that, it might be a better use of our money to spend it on these hot topics that we need to address now rather than later.
Well, I would say, I think what would be, in my opinion, would be useful, then it goes to it's like what they do on bid day savings, where they have a schedule based upon, to me, what would be of value then is that for you and staff, you and the rest of the administration, determine, okay, what's the priority then? If you've got, these are the things that you'd, the gray on the outliers, okay, if you've got X number of dollars, what would you spend it on? If you had Y dollars, how do you prioritize
And we're
those?
trying to do some of that, but I have to be cautious, because when we ask Moody Nolan to do any investigative, more work, it's gonna cost us more money.
Right, oh, you're right.
So if you see the ones that I put down as the outliers, those are the ones that, with Turner, Moody Nolan, PMC, myself, we discuss, those are the topics we feel that we can't neglect. The IT portion of it, we feel that if we're going to be working on that, replacing, it's already outdated. And it should be looked at now as part of this project.
And as George stated too, pointed out, even though the board, we talked about the furniture, when we went back and had a discussion, we realized, okay, we want new furniture, and we agreed to students, that's what they would see when they go in the buildings. But we are not going to buy $1 million of furniture and then have a roof leaking. I mean, we're not going to do that. So he has his team, is doing a roof assessment. He's going to let us know, do we need to do a roof? And if we have to, then we know some things are going to be shifted.
And I'm going to start an investigation on, and I already asked a few questions, but I'm looking at an opportunity to rent semi-truck trailers, where we would rent 5 of them for, we're thinking about 5. And what I would do is we'd evaluate the furniture. We have one evaluation from years ago, says it all should be replaced, but I do believe we can go through and keep color coordinated items. So when you walk into a classroom, we kept the best of the student desk, best of the teacher's desk, and we would dispose of the stuff that, you've seen pictures of some of the stuff, it shouldn't even be put in a trailer. So I think we could spend a lot less. It probably would still be in a 6-figure area, but a lot less than $350,000 to store it for 2 years. So we'd store it on site. I'd actually use Milliken. We'd load the trailers up with our staff, put it over at Milliken for 2 years.
Well, since I'm the one that had hissy fit about the furniture, I'm very pleased to hear what you guys are saying. So thank you for doing this and figuring out ways of making it work within the budget that we have.
I have to reiterate, because I know you all brought it up, and it is a concern. We need to build a contingency up, because there is no room or opportunity for us to go over budget. We can't let that happen. It won't happen.
I got two kind of questions, observations, and maybe a third. One is that I always had in my mind that we were talking about $3 million, and I see 2.8 here. Was I just daydreaming?
Which,
Well, when we talked about what the levy, the PI levy generated, was it always 2.8 million?
now, if you look at that last page, we averaged, I want to say it's 3.6.
Yeah, I think it was originally.
Right.
So I guess my question begins to be, why is it fluctuating?
We've always had, well, for years we were paying back a House bill project. Now we have bond debt that we're paying back.
Okay, so what we've already, I saw that we deducted the bond debt on the first page, which
Yes,
generated to
again, that number,
1.5.
Mr. Register, that 2.8 estimate is what Mr. Reinhardt is willing to give me. So we pull in taxes because we're not sure of what they're actually going to be, and it's reflected over the history. Bob Reinhardt,
Oh,
Assistant Treasurer.
okay, I'm sorry.
So
Okay,
we felt
this-
comfortable with saying 2.8 million is what we can actually use.
Okay, so, but to some extent, this number in fact is doctored, the 2.8.
Yes, yes it is. And
Okay, I
and the
just-
actual numbers are that last page. Those are,
I just want to make sure I didn't,
and again, I
Issue with property taxes.
I just wanted to make sure because,
don't like the word doctored. How about if we say it's a better estimate, a low estimate, right? I do not want to ever have to say I blew it and expected more than what we actually received.
okay, so my dream was not that far out of
No.
reality. Okay, that's one piece. The second piece is that if we look at year by year, we run into a deficit on the PI budget.
Right.
And we haven't had any kind of conversation about what we do about that, if all of these things have to be done, something's still got to be knocked out of this because we don't have enough money to do it.
Right. And that's why you see the defers are on here, and that's what I use that for, because they have to, just like maintenance, we'll defer it because I can't afford to do it. And it'll be the units, and what'll happen, just so you are aware where we take it from first. Air conditioning systems are manufactured to operate from a 10 to 20 year life cycle, depending on who makes it, right? We have systems that are running on 30 years right now. And if it comes down to a point where I have to fix, say, a roof that's leaking or replace an air conditioning system that's still operating, I'm going to fix the roof because I got to protect the stuff that's in the building. So those decisions are made. Air conditioning systems are usually taken off the list first because it's more comfort.
Yeah, the reason I even entered into this conversation, when we went from the PI budget being a 5-year renewal to a permanent, we thought we did such a great thing.
You did.
Well, I think that's right. But what it also says that at some point in time, this board has got to go back and look at that a little bit too.
We knew that when we did it.
Huh?
We knew that when we did it. I mean.
Yeah.
Well, each year
Well,
buys less.
if
money.
you're
You're right, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
If you get phase 2 under our belt and accomplished, that you have plenty of money. Again, we're starting all over at the high school. I mean, at some point, the high school has to be put back into the cycle.
Yeah, and all I'm saying is that we ought to have in our mind that our PI at this point is so tight, we really got to look at how we enlarge it at some point, I think.
Question, on the sheet on the last page with the fiscal year, but year by year, I'm confused. Basically, by the end of 18, you have an ending balance of 5 million. I'm confused as to why that would, I don't understand, if the other pages are showing we don't have enough money, how come we have a 5 million? Explain the math behind that.
Well, there is a cash balance.
Okay.
And the cash balance is there because over the last couple years, we have been very stingy with spending money, not knowing what the future is. Again, I'd rather have that balance than sit there and say, holy cow, we're negative, I can't afford to do anything.
It's your carryover then.
Right.
Okay.
So though you see 5.7 million, that doesn't count the current encumbrances of this year. Plus anything that has been done in the past that hasn't been paid out yet. For example, we had When we did the Oxford facade and the windows at the north elevation, that project was open for 2 years because there was some disputes. So we have some of these that are well over a year, still open purchase orders that we're expecting some, but not a lot of money, but there's some of the carryovers is those encumbrances.
So the $5 million is the cash balance, it's not what you actually have to use, it's what you have in the fund. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the way that we really have to think about it is that if we wanted to take the time to look at every little piece of that, we could see it all. But I think from the standpoint of how we think about budgeting, it's actually budgeting. You know, it's an estimate, it's a plan, it's what we think we will have available to us as opposed to the actual dollars that are available to us.
Well, the reason I'm asking is that this is a public document. I got a document that says I got a $5 million balance. In the meantime, I don't want to say we're crying poor, but we're belaboring the fact that we don't have the dollars to do something. If I don't have the backstory behind it, well, wait, you got $5 million.
And you're right,
over
you
here.
have to understand.
Exactly.
Well, it might be that we think about how we want to talk about this a little bit more. And I think that's probably open too, so that if we think about it, I was thinking about what we did with the PAFRA. That may be a similar kind of conversation around where we are around PI dollars.
Correct, so that's part, George kind of alluded to a little bit, that's part of strategic plan goal 5 and he's working on this year, what that looks like on our website.
Right.
And providing that document on the website so people can see what the projects and how we spent those.
Right, so
I think incorporating both those things, I think all Ron's saying is just be very thoughtful about it.
Yeah.
Don't just dump a document on that
Right.
website, which I know you would never do.
Right.
But let's be very thoughtful about how it would be read and make sure that the explanation.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
And that's why we got Scott working on, that's Scott working on that.
So, please don't take this question to anything except for this is technology night, the board docs is here. So, resource planning software is pretty well developed at this point in almost all fields. I absolutely understand that every one of us would say, well, you gotta do the roof because leak water in, and we could say, you gotta do tuck pointing because water's gonna come in the walls, and that's gonna be a domino effect. Those are all anecdotal comments. They certainly are based in some facts, but they're not based in any sort of logical, what makes the most sense. So, from what, excuse me. Sorry. From what we've been talking about today in terms of priorities, I can actually see different ways to prioritize. There's, which makes the most educational sense. There's which makes the most building envelope sense, and which things are going to cost you more money, so you're better off doing them now. Do we use resource planning software in any way to create a more systematic approach to the problem?
That is one option that K2M provided me if we want to go down this path of them assessing all of our elementary schools and other buildings. That would be one of the tools that they were provided at the end of the day after they assessed the HVAC, the facade, the windows, and so on and so on. But currently, no. Right now, we approach it, we try to do everything that will immediately impact students. That's our goal. And then from that, of course, we have to protect the facility itself. So in the bigger picture, no, I wish I did have software that we utilize, but I don't.
And George, I'm in no way demeaning what we've done in the past. It's much more a matter of that there's a complexity associated with this. And I think, we all fall into that trap of, like we do in our own homes, right? Oh, well, we got to do this because this is going to cause this. And then if you have the beauty of some sort of hindsight, you can then say, oh, I really wish I had done something because that is. And obviously, there's some variables you can't control. But I just wonder how much of that, and have we done any sort of analysis of cost benefit?
I think that would be a great position to be in, because if we had some sort of tool that all the data is in there, again, that's what K2M's offering us. As we move ahead here, we would have that tool in place, that all the different systems and assets that we have would have been evaluated, and we can use that as we moved ahead as a tool to say this is how we need to proceed. Right now, it's the consultants, numerous consultants, taking all the information, putting it together, and putting it into that 5-year forecast that you see.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, then I just want to say something.
I didn't know if your system earlier about.
No, I wanted to just remind us that it would be good, there are two things happening, that we won't have another meeting before they come up, and they're community type things. Like the meeting at the community center on Thursday night, around Coventry. It would be good if one or two of us go. I'm not gonna be able to be there, and I think the superintendent has a previous engagement as well. So think about whether or not you could be there. But I think at least one or two of us ought to be there. I don't think it means that much, but I think it would be noticed if we're not absent, if we're absent. The second thing is that on Sunday, the Cleveland Foundation has gotten together with a number of organizations throughout the county on this piece that they call Common Ground, which they say everybody come down to Public Square and give your input on who we are and where we are and where we're going. And it turns out that they have probably 50 different venues in which you could have some input around what our future as a community looks like. And one of them, I believe, is at Kane Park related to the schools. So it might be good if we decide some of us will show up there. And if you go online, there are a number of other things. They're dealing with everything from opioids to jobs to education with us. Just about 50 different million things. But you could go online. I think, when I first looked at it, I sort of just dismissed it. But when I looked at all the things that they're actually doing, that it might be worth, and particularly since we're involved in it, it might be worth us at least taking a note of what's going on.
Only just from a etiquette and protocol component, did we receive any individual members of the board or the superintendent, did anybody for the event Thursday night reach out to us and say, hey, we'd like you to be there, or even Sunday? I mean, if the topic's at schools,
I'm not sure that happened, Eric. I'm
just curious.
For Thursday, Tanisha informed me
okay.
of the event, and I had Caroline put it on.
Okay. I know that.
Yeah.
I was wondering.
But other than that,
okay,
no.
Okay.
But it's okay, Eric.
No, I understand. I'm just asking.
We're big boys now.
I'm all about invitations. If you're doing something, you should invite individuals. So I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, and I think Sunday's event, I think I'm a participant. I believe I'm a participant in Sunday.
I don't know how we got involved in it. Do you know how we got involved?
Lisa Hunt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's part of Scott's group with the communication and parents and yeah.
Okay. It's a nice snag, I think.
Yeah.
Still kind of interesting to me what this common ground is.
Yeah.
But
I think it gives an
long enough.
open space, a neutral space for people to talk about various topics. So it should be interesting. I think just at a table, we just kind of come and.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that I could be a little bit cynical around these kind of things.
That's my job.
That's true. But maybe I've been around you
First
too
it's
long.
Cal, now it's you.
Okay, anything else? Then I think we're at that point of closing the meeting. So I will accept a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second.
Voting is open.
The voting is open.
Is there a drum
I can't adjourn until I see.
Yeah, you're the one
See
who
what-
Not that. I want a drum.
Okay, so all votes are in. Close the voting.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's see where we are. We gotta be able
This is a
to
very
leave
controversial
tonight, or do we have to stay?
I wonder how it's going to turn out.
Oh, yes, we're adjourned.